Imagine a rainy night, the kind where the sky seems to cry out everything it held back during the day, and you're alone at home listening to the relentless drumming on the window when suddenly someone whispers in your ear, "You're just like your father." And that scares me. That sentence, loaded with an ancient, deep fear, is the hook that makes you stop everything, because deep down, there are truths that echo through generations, truths that can either destroy you or save you. If you've ever felt the weight of a family legacy dragging you toward the abyss, stay until the end. Because this story might be yours. Once upon a time in a small coastal town where the sea always seemed angry, as if it guarded drowned secrets, there was a young man named Lucas with green eyes he had inherited from his father's eyes that seemed to capture sunlight even on the grayest days. Lucas grew up under the roof of an old house, its walls creaking like tired bones, and his mother, Elena, a woman with hands calloused from working at a local bakery, watched him with a mixture of love and silent terror. From a young age, Lucas displayed traits that made Elena tremble. The way he laughed loud and carefree, echoing the laugh of the husband who had abandoned her years earlier. Man named Victor, who drank the whole ocean in bottles of whiskey and turned nights into nightmares, with clenched fists and words sharper than knives. Victor was not just an absent father. He was a shadow that seeped into everything, an addiction that consumed entire families, leaving scars time could not erase. Elena saw in Lucas not only the physical resemblance, the strong jaw, the wavy hair falling across his forehead, but something more dangerous, an inclination toward impulsiveness, toward choices that echoed his father's. Like the time of 15 when Lucas stole a bottle of liquor from a neighbor's shop, laughing as if it were an innocent prank butt. Elena felt the ground open beneath her feet, reliving the nights. Victor stumbled home reeking of alcohol and false regret. Can you imagine the smell of fresh bread mixed with the sweat of fear in the bakery where Elena worked, kneading dough with force as if she could crush the memories haunting her? And when she returned home, she'd see Lucas playing soccer in the street, laughing with friends, and her heart tightened because that laugh was identical in echo, transporting her back to the days when Victor promised to change, but never did, leaving her alone with a son who carried the same fire in his veins. As years passed, like waves eroding the coast slowly but relentlessly, Lucas became a man. He worked as a fisherman, feeling salt on his skin and the rocking of the boat as a freedom his father never had. But Elena noticed the signs creeping in, subtle at first. Nights when he came home late, his breath faintly sweetened by rum shared with friends after a day at sea. Heated arguments with his girlfriend, Sophia, a girl with dark hair and a shy smile who saw a future in him, yet slowly began to wonder if that future was just a broken mirror of the past. Sophia, who worked as a teacher at the local school, heard Elena's stories about Victor, how he had promised her the world, but delivered only pain and solitude, and she began to see glimpses of him in Lucas. Possessiveness disguised as affection, the way he raised his voice when things didn't go as planned, and that laugh, always that laugh that masked a restrained rage, as if the ocean inside him could stir at any moment, turning calm into storm. One night, after a brutal fight where Lucas threw a glass against the wall, shattering it into fragments like glass tears, Sophia whispered to herself, "He's just like his father." And that scares me. But she didn't say it out loud, not yet, because love is like that. A veil that covers the truth until it bleeds through. She clung to hope that Lucas was different, that those green eyes could shine with kindness instead of fury. The conflict deepened like a storm forming on the horizon, one of those tempests fishermen fear more than the sea itself. Lucas began to feel the weight of this inheritance, not only in his mother's unspoken words, but in his own inner demons. Sleepless nights when he stared at the mirror and saw not his reflection, but Victor's, with lines of bitterness that did not yet exist but felt inevitable. The smell of salt and fish clinging to his skin could not mask the phantom odor of alcohol he swore never to touch. He remembered his father vaguely, fragmented memories like broken shells on the shore, Victor teaching him to cast the net into the sea with firm hands and a hoarse voice, but then, the stench of liquor filling the air, the shouting echoing through the house. Elena crying in the corner while he's still a child hid under the bed, his heart pounding like a war drum, the air heavy and suffocating as if the whole house breathed despair. Why was he like that? Lucas wondered. And silently, he feared he was the living answer to that question. On lonely nights aboard his boat, swaying with the waves, he felt a dull anger flare over trifles, like a net tangled in itself, and found his fists clenching exactly as Victor's would. Fear invaded him like cold water seeping through cracks. Elena, watching her son slowly sink, tried to talk, but her words came out like whispers drowned by the wind. Son, you have his fire in your veins, but you don't have to let it burn you. She often quoted a phrase she once read in an old book about broken families from a psychologist named Gabor Trauma. Is not what happens to you, but what happens inside you as a result of what happens to you. Elena used that as a lighthouse, trying to steer Lucas away from the abyss. But he resisted, believing he was strong enough to carry the legacy without bowing to it, because admitting weakness would feel like admitting. Victor still lived inside him, pulling his strings like an invisible puppeteer. Meanwhile, Sophia battled her own ghosts, remembering her mother who had endured a similar man, swearing never to repeat the cycle. Yet there she was feeling the familiar tug of doubt, the smell of sea and Lucas's sweat, when he held her close, her heart racing not only from love but from a growing dread like seaweed spreading silently across the ocean floor, inescapable. Then came the turning point, the kind that makes your heart stop for a moment, like when a giant wave rises from nowhere and threatens to swallow the boat whole. It happened one night during a village festival, bonfires crackling on the beach, music echoing in the background. Lucas drank too much, alcohol warming his blood like a friendly fire turned enemy. The salty air mingled with smoke and laughter, but inside him something boiled. Sophia was there, laughing with friends. But when Lucas saw her talking to an old acquaintance, something snapped irrational jealousy. A direct inheritance from Victor, who accused Elena of imagined betrayals. Lucas grabbed her arm, his voice loud, his eyes blazing, shouting words that echoed past fights. In the heated moment, he raised his hand, stopping mid-air, as if an invisible force held him back. The beach wind blew cold against his hot skin, and the world seemed to slow. Sophia, tears in her eyes, finally spoke the words Elena had carried for years. "You're just like your father." "And that scares me." Lucas froze, the world spinning around him like a whirlpool. In that fraction of a second, he saw not only Sophia as fear, but also the reflection of all the nights his mother trembled. The crashing waves on the shore sounded like a final verdict, echoing in his mind. He dropped everything and ran to the beach, the sea licking at his feet as if it wanted to take him away. Under the indifferent stars, he cried for the first time in years, feeling the crushing weight of a lineage threatening to drown him, his salty tears blending with the ocean, his chest tightening as if he were drowning on dry land. But stories like this don't end at rock bottom. They climb back up with sharp claws and ragged breath. Lucas, shaken to his core, sought help the next day, going to a small clinic in the neighboring town. There, an elderly therapist, with eyes as wise as a calm sea, listened without judgment. The air smelled of old books and coffee as Lucas unraveled his story like a tangled net. "Heredity is not destiny," said the man, quoting a study from the American Psychological Association, showing how cycles of abuse could be broken with awareness and effort, with success rates above 70% for those who sought therapy. Those words cut through Lucas like light-piercing fog, illuminating a path he had never seen before. He dove into it like diving into the ocean for his own salvation, weekly sessions where he unraveled the threads of the past, understanding that Victor's addiction and rage came from his own unresolved trauma, a grandfather who was an alcoholic and beat him, and so on, a chain stretching back generations. By understanding this, Lucas felt the weight lift, like anchors finally released. He stopped drinking, channeling his impulsiveness into morning runs on the beach, sweat washing out the accumulated poison, the sunrise painting the horizon like a promise of renewal. Slowly, his arguments with Sophia became conversations. Possessiveness gave way to trust. Elena, witnessing the transformation, cried in relief, hugging him as if he were a child again, smelling the clean sea on him without alcohol's ghost. Sophia, cautious but hopeful, returned to him, building a future where his father's shadows were only distant echoes, not commands. Together, they walked along the beach at sunset, hands intertwined, the wind carrying away old pains. And in the end, as the sun set over a now calm sea, Lucas looked at his reflection in the water and no longer saw a ghost, but a man who broke the cycle, proving that resemblances are only seeds. It's up to us to decide whether we water them with poison or with light. Years later, he married Sophia, and they had a son who grew up without the weight of shadows, laughing freely, untouched by old fears. But what if I told you this story isn't fiction? It's inspired by real accounts of thousands who battle toxic family legacies. And maybe, just maybe, it's echoing in your life right now, making you question your own reflection in the mirror. Do you believe this really happened? Have you ever lived something like this, feeling the fear of becoming what you dread the most? If this touched you, it's because this video was meant to reach you. Subscribe to the channel, but only if you have the courage to face your own shadows.